Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's an honor and a privilege to be in such a prestigious hall.
Let's talk about back in the day and being a pioneer at Gorman. You started there back in the late 60s before going to Western High. David Hum amongst, you could talk about Hawkins over at Western. You had a chance to coach him. A couple of true All-Americans. Let's talk about back in the day.
I don't have a lot more to say than you've already said. I often wonder whether they coached me or I coached them. You know, when you have All-Americans, you don't have to coach a lot. I remember those two especially, but I had others that were as good but maybe didn't get as far as they did. When you coach those kind of kids, they ask to stay out late after practice. They want to work harder, but they work by themselves as hard as any coach could push them. And as I said, I don't know who coached them, me or they coached vice versa. But probably the greatest athletes I ever had were back in those days at Bishop Gorman and at Rancho and at Western. I couldn't go any farther. I know that there are still good athletes. I see them every weekend. I have nothing but respect for them. But it's hard to compare today with 40 years ago.
When you go back to 40 years ago, and there were a handful of schools, there's 30 plus now. But explain the difference in your opinion, what you see, the competition, the way things are being run by coaches, by schools, and the way the kids are compared to the way they used to be.
As I said earlier, back 40 years ago, there was more respect among coaches. Coaches got together more often and talked athletics and cared about each other and about programs. What I see today is a split among coaches. I don't see all of the camaraderie that there used to be. I don't see gatherings like there used to be. I see a group of top-level coaches gathering, and then I see a group of people who are on the lower end of the program gathering, and I don't see the respect today that I used to see. And I think that's because of the population growth. I think their kids are spread all over the valley. I don't think there's one particular program that's better than the other in the public high schools, with the exception of a couple schools that I'd rather not mention. But there is one school that's head and shoulders above everybody talent-wise, and that's different today than it was in 1967. And I say that because I was at Gorman in 1967. We had probably 20 or 25 varsity football players on that team in 1967. So what we had to do was suit up freshmen and JVs to make our varsity look like it was competitive to the rest of the kids in the city. At one time, they didn't want us to play at the AAA. But then we started winning a few games and everyone shut up. So now Gorman's winning and everybody's complaining the opposite way.
Right.
So that's about all I can say regarding that. But all I would wish for is a fair and balanced system throughout the city. That the competition is fair and balanced, and that all teams have an equal playing field. And that way all play by the same rules.
Now, along with the respect you mentioned amongst the coaches, if you could bring something else from back in the day up to present, what would that be?
I guess more people who are interested in the coaching profession. Back in those days, you had to line up. There were no jobs available. They were very, very competitive. You had to get a good break. You had to be in the right place at the right time. Today, schools are looking for coaches because it is very difficult. The coaching profession is very difficult. So in the old days, you had to line up and wait your turn, pay your dues, and get a break and get a head coaching job. Today, there are head coaching jobs that open every year. So that would be the biggest difference from then until now, that there are more vacancies, more people available.
Final question. Guys back in the day, there's a reputation, a saying that guys are tougher from back in the day than guys today playing. Nothing about the heart, just toughness. Would you agree with that?
I think the rules have changed considerably from back in the day. I think the rules have changed for the better. Back in the day, they were tougher because they could be. Today, rules have been made to make it more safe for kids to participate in football, and I think that's a good thing. But yeah, back in the day, they were tougher. But there weren't a lot of rules about keeping your hands off the quarterback, and there weren't a lot of rules about standing up and using your hands to block with. Back in the day, you had to fire out and use both hands to make a clean block. Today, you stand up and push. So all those rules are good for the safety of the kids. But yes, back in the day they were tougher.
Going into the Hall of Fame here, what does it mean to you?
It's the most humble and honoring experience of my life. I spoke at the inaugural Hall of Fame in 1997 when they had one inductee, and that was David Humm. And I was on the stage with Tom Osborne, who was the head football coach at Nebraska at the time, and Al Davis, who was the owner of the Raiders. And of course, I was very intimidated. And I stood up and when it was my turn to speak, I said, I don't know who coached who, David coached me or I coached David. All I can say is that I'm proud to be here today, and I'm proud that I coached David, and he's my lifelong friend. So I'm honored to be in this Hall of Fame. I've had it in my eyesight for 15 years. I've been inducted into 6 others, and I am honored, and I respect all of those, but this is the one that I always wanted to be into. So I can only thank those who are responsible.